Welcome back to government. I'm sure you guys are all very excited to be tuning in. Today's mass media. This is actually some of my favorite stuff, and we'll cover a good amount of this in class too. But the lecture part, hoping to get out of the way, so it's not just me standing there talking directly at you. So here we go. Might want to pause this because I'm not going to stay on it very long. But here's some of the important vocab from this unit. Media thinking map. We're going to work on this in class. Just want you to know the different avenues, different mediums of media, and where we're at, what we rely upon. Again, we talked about this earlier in the unit, that every one of you would say, oh, the internet is by far and away the most important aspect where we get our news. Not the truth. Most Americans, not most, 97% of American households, or 98%, have a TV. Not everybody's on their phones all the time like you guys, or like even, I guess, me too, sorry. It's just people watch TV. They get most of their news there. So TV is far and away the place where most people get their information. So the roles of the media, and we're going to watch a few videos about these in class just to show you and show you some highlights. But the watchdog, it is their job to be highly critical of politicians. They are supposed to be constantly fact-checking and digging into politicians' past. They want to dig up information because it sells, number one. Number two, it's important. I mean, it truly is. You find out something about one of the candidates or something that they've done, it's worth investigating and it's worth publishing. They do act as a scorekeeper. They keep track of what you say, what you voted on or how you voted, and whether it's something that you did or something you said, they're going to keep track of it and then bring it back up. You might recall this summer them talking quite a bit about mail-in voting and how Trump has been very adamant that mail-in voting could cause problems. And then it comes out that not only he, but his press secretary and a few others within the White House have voted by mail the last 2 or 3 times they had an election. So they're keeping track. They do keep track. They do keep score from the presidency down to members of Congress and the way that they voted on specific issues or legislation that they've sponsored. They're keeping track of that, and they'll bring it back up later. Gatekeeper. This is their most important role. They determine what makes it to you. They are kind of that filter of everything that's happening. They have to decide what to print, what's important, what do Americans want to read, what do they want to know. They choose which stories are heard by you. They're the ones, again, they control what's out there. They can bury a story if they don't feel like it's a good story or there's nothing to it or people won't read it, or they can give it to you. And going back to that watchdog, when you see really good stuff, they'll publish it. You can read ad nauseum about the history of things that have happened, and we love a scandal, particularly, marital scandals and the like, and extramarital affairs among politicians have been very well documented. And the people that read those stories, not just click the headlines, actually read those stories, is much higher than Americans who read a story about foreign policy. It's the sad truth, but entertainment is something that we all seek. The media and public agenda. Again, recall that public agenda is societal problems that the nation's leaders agree need attention. Is it the same every month, every year, every week? No, it's not. It changes often. 1 week it might be mail-in voting, which you might see come up again. Another week it's going to be the pandemic, or it's going to be a war, a foreign affairs catastrophe happens when information gets out about a document or something. There's a number of things, but they're the problems that the nation's leaders have agreed need attention. The media do have the power of shifting focus. They can change the topics that are up for discussion, but they do not make public policy. That is up to the politicians. That is up to your Congress, your members of the House and Senate. That's their job. The politician's job is to make public policy. It's the media's job to report on it. Do they have to report on everything? No, they do not. It is not correct to say that the media tell people what to think, but it's clear that they tell people what to think about. They don't tell you how to or what you should know or should say about a specific topic, but you better believe that what you're talking about with your coworkers and your friends on Monday morning at the water cooler is generally because somebody read about it through some avenue of media. So the media can shape what is on the table in terms of the government creating public policy, and if they want to bury a story, they can. They have been guilty of this in the past. Burying a story that makes them look bad, one of their editors look bad, for instance, any number of things. They do it. It does happen. Is it common? There's enough media outlets out there, not necessarily, but it happens. So they can bury a story when they need to. Election. How does the mass media role? What's their role in elections? Elections would not be what they are today without the media. This is what we call a symbiotic relationship. They work together. They need one another. The media needs elections because it's something to report on. Elections need the media because the politicians need to get their voice out there in what they believe. Candidates don't rely as much on the party as they once did. You still, again, they're going to have to be a member of a major political party to be president anyway, so it's not going to happen in my lifetime, I doubt. But they don't rely on them as much. Trump's campaign from 2016 will be studied exhaustively for a number of years because of his ability to capture media attention. How he did it, again, people will look at and they will study because he was very good at it. He got more exposure and saved a lot of money just by kind of the way he handled and went with the media. Debates and interviews are important because people put a large focus on personality, character, abilities. You might remember the Nixon-Kennedy debates from U.S. history class, where if you watched it on TV, you said far and away, Kennedy won. He was so much more prepared. He looked better. Everything was great. Nixon was in bad shape. He was sweating. He looked out of sorts. He wasn't put together very well. But those that listened to it on the radio had the exact opposite view and said that Nixon blew Kennedy out of the water when it came to policy matters. TV changed everything, and you'll remember that again from U.S. history class. But they put a large focus on your personality, your character. Why did the TV people say that? Well, Kenny was a good-looking guy. People liked to look at him. People liked him. He was composed, and he was a good speaker, and people liked to generally think, hey, this is a young guy who's in charge, and he's doing a good job. So that can impact it. Media often does show just simple sound bites. The mistakes you see are simple sound bites. The photo ops that you see are usually staged, that they do this on purpose. But that's how they use it. They use it in election cycles, but they'll also use it as material because they're running for office. And again, I'll show you some examples of these in class. Limits. There are a lot of limits. People are selective in what they listen to and read. You might have someone that says, I'm only listening to NPR on the radio because it seems balanced, or I'm only listening to Fox News because they're the only ones that give me the truth. Through every media source that you want to go through, you can say that about. The content carried by media carriers is often influenced by financial concerns. 5 of the companies, all the media companies, are owned by 5 major people. 5 major groups own all of them. So yes, financial concerns are obviously there. From newspapers, I think the Washington Post is now owned by Amazon. So what they publish, and is often, people are critical of it because of this, but it is often influenced by financial concerns. They need to sell newspapers. They need to sell clicks. They need to sell viewership on TV. So that obviously has to be a concern. We would, again, as we mentioned earlier, we would much rather be entertained than informed. Again, Americans love a scandal. We would much rather hear this than we ever do about some economic policy or how we can control Social Security. Media outlets often only skim the surface of relevant issues, and we'll talk about sound bites, and again, more in depth in class. But they basically say that our attention span is so minuscule that we don't pay attention long enough for them to even really report on it, that it's not that important because Americans won't listen. So they skim the surface because they need to get through as many stories as they can in that half-an-hour broadcast to try to keep yours and my attention. In-depth coverage is there. It's available. You can find it. Go out and find it if you're looking for it. It's available even in the media. Those that want it, seek it out, and you're going to find it. With access to the internet, you can find these stories and find this information. In this little blue box, as you can see, this is very true. It's hard to be an informed citizen today due to all what we call this superficial news, these stories and information. Read the headline. Most Americans, I'm going to look up the percentage for class. It's the percentage of people that read the headline and the first paragraph is really high. Reading paragraphs 2 through 9, it drops off dramatically, as you can expect. Coverage of the branches. And this is something that the media does and certainly is important. One, from an election standpoint, they're obviously going to cover the presidential race a lot more because that affects all Americans, right? A Senate race in Iowa, while important for Iowans, is not that, altogether that important for someone that lives in Ohio or Indiana. So the coverage of the branches in a normal cycle, though, is pretty easy, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at it. Why do they cover the president so often? Well, one, he's the head of government, head of the executive branch, figurehead. He has the bully pulpit. Basically, his ability through the State of the Union addresses and his access to media can kind of set this agenda. When the State of the Union, when they give that with a number of things that they would like to see Congress tackle. Congress doesn't have to tackle it, but Americans are now, it's on their radar, Americans' radar, so they want to see it tackled now too. So that's how the president, through his bully pulpit and using the media, he can put out the things that he would like to be discussed or talked about. So it's easy to cover. One person, he has a press secretary, all these things that makes it very easy to cover. Congress is the hardest to cover. 435 House members, 100 senators. Who are you going to pick? Hard to do. So you just don't do it very often. Unless you're a local media, it doesn't happen all that often. Who do they cover? They cover the Speaker of the House, because they're very powerful, usually head of the majority party in the House. And the Senate Majority Leader gets a fair amount of press as well. Minority Leader does get some, but generally it's those leadership positions that they're going to cover in the press when things need to be discussed or they need to be interviewed. Judicial branch is the least amount of coverage. It's been good and bad. We want it. Americans demand it. We would love to see the insides of the Supreme Court. We'd love to see a case be argued, but you're not allowed to have any cameras in the Supreme Court. There are audio recordings, but people aren't as interested in that. There is a growing desire for increased coverage. It's not likely going to happen. The judicial branch and the Supreme Court justices like it this way. They are to be seen as nonpartisan. They don't want to be seen as favoring either Democrats or Republicans. So they like their kind of this cloak that they reside behind. So they enjoy that. It also is meant to be independent, very independent, and they don't want media influencing it or trying to influence the justices by any stretch. People are interested in it though, and when the decisions are passed down in June, the media covers it to a great deal. They cover it quite a bit. So again, least amount of coverage. You most likely wouldn't know a Supreme Court justice if they walk down our hallways at school. They're just not very well known. They're not covered that well. And they generally tend to like that. Politicians' use of the media. How does each politician use it? As we mentioned with the president, the bully pulpit. They use it often. It's a very effective tool. President says it's important, so automatically it receives coverage. That's the very nature of it. Sometimes it can be outlandish, and they'll still cover it. It is their most powerful tool when setting the policy agenda, because people, again, they say it gets on the reader's or the viewer's mind, and they want it tackled, and then therefore Congress has to generally do something, or governors, down the line has to do something. They use it to mobilize public support. They want to say something, and they hope that you'll latch onto it and call your representative and help them, get that bill passed. But they do work with that and use it quite a bit. White House press secretary, a lot of power, daily briefings, although this administration has really taken those back quite a bit, but it was daily briefings, so it was a lot of access to the media. They do use trial balloons. This is information that they leak, not just the president, all politicians and branches do this. They leak information to the media about a government official, a candidate, or a policy idea, and they want to see how it floats. Do people like it? If people like it, they'll tackle it and go on and use it. They'll even put their viewpoints out there as a trial balloon and see how people react to what they're thinking of introducing or voting on. So they do use them, and it's something that's very effective. Spin. This is when you attempt to present his or her actions in a position on a policy in a positive light. They want to make it look favorable. You oftentimes do this by making a joke of it. Is a very good, effective way of doing it, or kind of turning it on your opponent or the other party. Technology, yes, it's all available. It's there. People use it. I mean, they all have their own website. You can see them on social media. You can follow every member of Congress, their office staff, and it's out there. It's pretty easy to do. And they use that media to really generate interest in them. They want to get voters, but also in public policy as well. As always, if you have any questions, stop by the room. Let me know. Hope you enjoyed part of this. I know these are going great and you're having so much fun.